Hello and welcome to the Human Frequency. We have some updates for you regarding the fire and smoke situation in California and beyond. Really just kind of the story has resolved itself as of about a week ago. So we have some new information to share about this that might give you some insight if you're experiencing smoke out of nowhere in your area.
hmm Yeah, so it's not that there aren't fires going on in California, but there's a psy-op of major proportions that goes along with it. So in Northern California, there are major fires burning and they're affecting a lot of people. And yes, they are destroying homes and it's a terrible situation. And what they're doing is they're pretty much, the ones that have been going, they're pretty much letting them burn. And the containment is just barely going up day by day. And the new ones that are coming up are actually coming up in places that had been receiving rain, but they're having a dry couple of weeks now. So wherever they can, these fires are being set. I do think this is arson, most likely. And the information that we have today kind of corroborates that. And I will open up some links and show you, but it looks like we are dealing with an arson situation in California. And that whenever there's a window of opportunity between rainstorms, not just in California, but throughout the Western US, they are lighting fires. Like in Utah, there was recently a fire that was put out by a massive amount of rain. Up in British Columbia, also, those fires have been put out by rain, thankfully, but they were being set between rainy periods. And we're seeing the same thing here, like in the Sierras around Lake Tahoe. They couldn't set any fires and now they can again, and there are new fires burning there.
So like the last episode, we will be showing a couple of articles, and also we will be going to Sharon's blog where we can see kind of like in real time what's happening with what she reports on and what the mainstream media says, sort of like in retaliation to that. It seems like
it's almost like they're reading my blog. And I kind of think they are, which is kind of a weird thing to say because it's not a major publication, but I've seen over and over again that the media takes my words and my terms and then they use them for their agenda. It's kind of strange to see things I've said in the past, like when I've said that our Oregon Energy has opened the door for storms, like on the West Coast, and we took down the West Coast frequency fence. And then they started saying stuff like the storm door is open. They never said that. So I just noticed that sometimes it looks like they might be reading it. I don't know. I'm going to share the screen and show some things that we've been looking at. So in the state of California, let me make it a little bigger if I can. Mostly in Northern California, there are still many fires burning. And the Dixie Fire is still out of control at 46% containment. It's going very, very slowly. That's this massive area here. The Monument Fire, the Caldor Fire, these are all huge fires that are barely contained. The McFarland Fire, they have it now at 93% containment. But what I've noted was that down in Southern California, this is a different situation. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and show you. You can't really see any in Southern California. They're not showing up on the map. But if you look at the side, they're all just a few hundred acres.
Very few.
And they're actually being contained quickly. And my theory on this is that it's just been so wet, especially with Project Monsoon bringing unseasonal rain into Southern California. The plants are saturated with moisture. The ground is saturated enough that even in the dry spells between rains, it looks like they're having a little bit of a harder time creating a wildfire here.
Yeah, these rains that are coming into California, they originate in Mexico and Arizona, and they sort of sweep up through Southern California, but haven't really made it so much into Northern California. They have here and there, but definitely Southern California has received the brunt of the rainfall that has fallen. And this, of course, in conjunction with the media just continuing their rhetoric of drought, 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 we can see that that's just not the case.
Right.
And even in Northern California, California as a whole does not usually get rain in the summertime. And that's not the proper usage of the word drought. That is called the dry season or summer, as you've pointed out. And that's what they used to call it.
They're always cherry picking dates too. Like an example that recently Minnesota has gotten tons and tons of rain, and they said they were in a drought, but now it's clear they're not. They're having literally up to 6 inches this week, and the whole state is just drenched. But in an article I read about it, they said that they are below average by 6 to 10 inches since June, which means that they're only calculating it from summer dates, though in the winter they were just fine. And they're saying, yeah, the summer rains are a little slow. However, if they get one more storm like what they are having right now, then there won't be any drought at all. They won't be able to say it.
And if they calculated, excuse me, if they calculated even from May, then it would show a completely different story. There would be a lot more rain. So again, yeah, cherry picking is kind of, that's the only strategy they have now.
The closest fire to us is the French fire in Kern County. It's still not Southern California, but Central California. This fire is barely contained. They seem to be just letting it burn. I can't verify what's going on there. It's to the east of where we live, and I'm not seeing any smoke from it. In fact, today's atmosphere is crystal clear. So
looks like that's near Lake Isabella area.
Yeah, so we're hoping that that one's dealt with soon, but we're trying to bring in more rain again. And the monsoonal rains are going to be returning in a few days. And we hope that this will help because, again, this area here where the French fire is burning had been receiving unseasonal rains. The whole of the Sierras and the Tehachapi Mountains have been receiving rain. So this has just been done between rainstorms.
So all these fires in Northern California, it sounds to me like there is a reason for them being just all condensed into this one area. So let's go to the next article.
This is, I don't know about the news source, so I'm not gonna, I don't look at much news, so I can't say, is this true or not? But it's a very interesting article because there are some points made in it that kind of corroborate things that I have believed. And so now I'm seeing it in writing that I'm not the only one that came up with these ideas. So let's hope that belief becomes knowledge soon, because right now we still don't know for sure. And this article is saying that a criminal justice professor was charged with setting massive forest fires in California. So they are linking fires to arson, which I already believed. And so I'd like to see my beliefs become knowledge soon. That a criminal justice professor has been charged in federal court with setting a series of forest fires in Northern California with intent to endanger firefighters. Gary Stephen Maynard, 47, was arrested Saturday and charged with setting multiple fires in Lassen National Forest and Shasta Trinity National Forest late last month. That would be in late July. Now, what they said here was where Maynard went, fires started, not just once, but over and over again. This is because they were tracking him. So that's how they know. But something is very strange about this because Gary Stephen Maynard is a university professor. He is lectured at Sonoma State University and Santa Clara University. He has a master's degree in political science, theater arts, and sociology, and a PhD in sociology. This is a pretty prestigious professor. What's he doing out there setting fires? It's very, very weird. Now, some people might say he's being scapegoated, but I think that he's being used. And I have always thought this, that they are mind controlling individuals to set these fires. That if they hired a guy to go out and do it and paid him to do it, that somebody would eventually come clean and say they did it. But if
it's too risky to do that. Whereas through mind control, that virtually eliminates that risk. And we'll get to the tracking in just a moment, but here's the interesting part. His credentials, this is very interesting. His teachings and research focus on the following topics: sociology of technology / social media. That's an interesting one right there. Social psychology, sociology of health, deviance and crime, sociology of the mass media, youth and adolescence, global sociology, environmental sociology, the sociology of sports, the sociology of drug abuse and alcoholism, and quantitative research methods.
This to me does not sound like some wacko nut job who goes around setting fires. However, it gets a little more interesting. Okay. The criminal complaint says Maynard was found by an investigator at the scene of a wildfire on the western slope of Mount Shasta, later designated the Cascade Fire. Maynard, who was trying to dig out his stuck car, told the investigator he didn't know anything about the fire. The suspect was uncooperative and agitated, according to the complaint. The witness said Maynard had been there since the previous day and seemed very angry after his car got stuck. At one point, Maynard pulled out a large knife, the witness said, and appeared mentally unstable. The witness described him as mumbling a lot and having bipolar-like behavior. So right away, we see that he wasn't in his right mind.
Yeah, and we see all the signs of mind control. And then just below that, investigators obtained a warrant to track Maynard's vehicle that prosecutors say linked him to at least 7 fires in the area. So there's their admission right there. They were tracking him.
They were tracking him. So now they said he set 1 fire. And so they wanted to track him since then. And so these 7 fires afterwards were all after the tracking device had been installed on his car. We all know that tracking devices are sending out signals, otherwise they wouldn't track. It's EMF. And I think that the tracking device was actually causing him to set the fires. It's just a theory. I cannot prove it. However, I'm seeing something that confirms things that I was thinking, and I'm not the only one thinking about this stuff.
The witness describing his behavior, bipolar-like behavior, just irrational, agitated. These are all signs that point to mind control.
Or he's not in his right mind. And then he's got this tracking device that's possibly sending him messages into his mind to do this stuff, because he didn't even know what he was doing. He's just, all of a sudden there's fires.
And as we were reading this article for the first time, I couldn't help but notice this little gray thing here. Are California wildfires due to arson or climate change?
It's a survey. It's interesting because I think this is a more conservative publication here, that's a little, alternative leaning, because in the mainstream media, they would never bring this up.
But what's interesting is it's not, your options are not arson or climate change. They're yes and no.
Oh, that is funny.
So this is just really, really bizarre, I think.
It's interesting that they put the words together at least. I would never put my name on a thing like that or submit to something like that, but it's just interesting that they put that out there. So this is what we've gotten from this article is just a little bit of a confirmation of stuff that we had been suspecting. And we were talking about what was the reason for smoke here in Southern California. And when we did our wildfire report, we had mentioned the weekend of fire or weekend of fear. This was a while ago. This was August 8th. Now, what's happened was ever since the last report we did, we found out so much more stuff that I wish I had known sooner. But as I found it out, the pieces came together. So even before I had reported on it, I had suggested that the smoke coming in, which obviously is close by. This was not from Northern California. This was all of a sudden plumes of smoke were coming in. And this was while there were no wildfires burning in Southern California during this time.
We talked about this in the last episode. We're talking about a fire that's almost 500 miles away, and the smoke would have had to move against the wind for it to come into our area. So geographically, just not possible. Yeah.
So we knew this was local. And so on August 8th, I suggested in this very article, I'm going to go down to that part. I can only guess, because we knew we didn't have any fires nearby and that the Northern California smoke physically couldn't get here based on the way the jet stream was. I can only guess that maybe this is smoke from a prescribed burn by the U.S. Forest Service, which they sometimes do up here. That was all I said. That was it. Then the very next day, and I didn't know this at the time, there was an article on NPR. Now it was updated on the 10th, but the article was published on the 9th. And you could see up here in the address bar that it was the 9th. And I was looking this up because I had to know. So I started searching into prescribed burns and looking at the Forest Service page and trying to get information about their burn schedule. And I couldn't get any information, but I found this one article. With extreme fires burning, Forest Service stops good fires too. That's the prescribed burn. They call it a good fire. So literally the next day after I suggested that's what they were doing, they put this out.
And what's interesting to note here is that prescribed burns is a topic that never gets any coverage. It never gets mentioned in the media. You don't hear any people talking about it just out in the world. It's something that is just completely ignored. So for this to come out the very next day, I think this is just another piece of evidence that lends credence to your theory that they are looking at your blog, because you have a very unique knowledge of orgonomy and science and just atmospheric science in general, and you're able to debunk a lot of the theories that they put forth as fact.
Yeah, I mean, and my blog is the only news source that covers it from that angle, because there are no ergonomic weather people out there. I mean, they're all meteorologists. If there was an ergonomist weather reporter, we would certainly have more accurate weather prediction. So in this article, they said, I'm going to highlight it. The agency is now suspending the use of prescribed burns, where foresters set carefully controlled fires that remove brush and vegetation, but don't kill the mature trees. It's also suspending what's known as managed wildfires for resource benefit, where it's interesting, where naturally caused fires are cautiously allowed to burn if they're in remote areas and don't pose a risk to people. Wow, they are letting wildfires burn. They're saying right here that they are letting some of these wildfires burn if they think that it's a good fire. And I think the resource benefit's very interesting, because what resource are they mining here? They're mining suffering, the suffering of the forest, the suffering of the animals, the suffering of all the people who live in those areas. The parasites mine human resources.
And what's interesting is that just above that, it says many extreme fires across the West are being fueled by overgrown forests where dense vegetation has accumulated over a century of fire suppression. So in effect, they're blaming fire suppression technology of the past 100 years or so for causing all of this vegetation that would previously burn up. Because they're putting the fires out, it accumulates, and that just makes the fires worse. So they will contradict this.
Yes, they do.
Of course, later in the article, and then contradict that.
They contradict themselves a lot. They're stepping all over themselves. I'm amazed they're reading my blog, but I have to say, it looked like in the past they were doing that. It is the only news source that reports on this stuff. So there's
It'd be nice
more.
If they would be productive to do something like donate rather than just read.
You mean donate to thekembo.com?
Yeah.
Which you can do if you want to support our work in tower busting the Western US and beyond, hopefully soon. We're moving farther and farther out there. So after the CGI image of what fires look like when you use a computer to make a picture. Okay, so I'm going to highlight again. In the Southwest, the Forest Service managed fires like this on more than 270,000 acres in 2020 to benefit the ecosystem. In that part of the country, managed wildfires have become a significant strategy because summer monsoon rains reduce the risk those fires could get out of hand. But the policy is controversial because in rare cases, managed wildfires have escaped, threatening homes and people. So I'm just showing this because that is a lot of acreage. That's like a massive wildfire, 270,000 acres in 2020. That's like what these major wildfires in California are burning.
And what do they mean by rare cases? That seems like a pretty loose term.
Yeah, if you're lighting a fire, it can get out of hand. It would be better if they didn't. That is my opinion.
Yeah, to manage the ecosystem.
Okay, Western US still has a fire deficit. So this is where they start to contradict themselves. So they're saying that despite the record-breaking wildfires of recent years, the Western US still has a fire deficit. Millions of acres once burned every year, either in fires caused by lightning or set by Native American tribes who used fire to shape the landscape. I think that's BS, by the way. I don't think they did that. Over millennia, forest ecosystems were accustomed to these low-grade fires, but that changed when the era of fire suppression began. For much of the last century, the Forest Service actively stopped all fires, adopting the 10 a.m. rule, where fires had to be extinguished by 10 a.m. the next day. And actually, I'm just going to jump to my blog real quick, because interestingly, the last day we saw fire smoke was the day that I figured this out. Oops, that's the wrong one. It was the air quality alerts. Every single air quality alert we've had for fire smoke has always ended somewhere between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. They would come up at night and end the next morning. So that kind of goes along with that 10 a.m. rule by the Forest Service.
That's right. And sure enough, here in effect until Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific.
And that was for August 20th. And that's about a week ago. And this is when we stopped seeing the wildfire smoke. And this was from fires in San Joaquin, Stanislaus, Merced, Madera, Fresno, Tulare, Kings, and the valley portion of Kern counties. So they were saying that there was fires in these areas, but not wildfires. And back to the Forest Service article. So they are saying that they They do it on purpose. Let me tell you how much they plan on doing it. This is astonishing, this statistic here, because they're going to do even more of this coming up. Even though they say that we are having the worst wildfires of all time, they're also saying that the Western US has a fire deficit, a direct contradiction. An estimated 20 million acres of forested land in California, nearly 20% of the state, needs some form of fuel reduction. California signed an agreement with the Forest Service last year to reduce vegetation on 1 million acres a year collectively, but the goal is still far off. In 2019, the projects only took place on 100,000 acres statewide. I can tell you that reason for that was that 2019 was the lowest fire season in 20 years in California due to extreme rains. The record-breaking winter of 2018 to 2019 made it impossible for wildfires or even controlled burns.
And this one is the biggest contradiction yet, because they're saying right here, state of California signed an agreement with the Forest Service. That's a contract. Those terms have to be fulfilled. 20 million acres has to get burned one way or another, and in one place or another. It doesn't matter where it is, it has to be done. So another direct contradiction. They're saying we're not doing this, yet they're just admitting, yeah, we have this contractual agreement to burn 20 million acres of landscape. So they're saying they're not doing it, and then they're saying that we're going to be doing even more of it. So
I wasn't
another
even
direct
gonna,
contradiction.
I wasn't even going to bring this up, but I just have to mention this one. Hotter droughts. I don't even like to talk about this whole climate change thing because they don't understand climate change, which is a reality. And our many videos and website explain what climate change is and how it works. And the fact of the matter is that with increasing OR, we're seeing a cooler planet. This is confounding gardeners everywhere and farmers everywhere because the media is telling them that it's getting hotter and hotter and their plants are freezing at weird times of year. So people are going to have to adapt to these new colder temperatures. But I just,
I'm glad you pointed it out.
Droughts. A lack of rain is not a temperature-based thing, it's a moisture-based thing. So they're just using this kind of language to scare people. And it's not true either. Heat, like if it's 95 degrees or if it's 100 degrees, it still does not make vegetation ignite. It's ridiculous. Also, California has been very, very humid this year. So I just had to point out that I mentioned that I thought it was prescribed burns in our area. The very next day, they're saying, oh, no, it isn't. I think it was. And I think that I didn't actually put the pieces together until this blog entry of August 19th. I don't like this ugly purple thing.
I don't like it either. Thank you for getting rid of it.
So like unaesthetic. Fire smoke returns from the west, August 19th. This was the day that I put the pieces together. And this is what our sky looked like. It was very, very ugly, but it was coming in from the west, not from the north. And as soon as I put the pieces together, we don't have this. And what it looks like today is this. No prescribed burns since August 19th. It's beautiful. And it was actually like this for the last few days.
That's the moon, by the way, in the center of the picture, not a craft.
Yeah, it's been very, very clear. Every morning, it's been absolutely pristine. No air pollution at all. So this is interesting to me how this has all changed. And go back again. Since we discovered this, they can't keep using the same tactics when people are figuring them out. And I know that my blog is just a small publication, but it seemed like enough to get them to stop doing this for now.
Well, you are the only one that figured this out and brought it up. And the fact that they released this article that is just one contradiction after another, that's got to tell you something about what's going through their minds and how they're explaining away things that can't be explained.
So I just wanted to give an update and show what's going on with more information, because if I had known all this when we did the last episode, it would have been included. But also, I think that the whole timeline would have been different because they didn't actually stop the burns until I figured out about their NPR article and said, okay, I know what you're doing and you're doing it on our turf. So that was the end of that. I do want to also mention something though, that is interesting that I think that everyone should keep in mind is that the sky has been getting hazy during the day. It starts out pristine in the morning and it becomes DOR-ish as the afternoon progresses. I've noticed this day after day, and then the next morning it's clear again. So there is some kind of pattern going on there, yet there's virtually no aircraft. And by aircraft, I mean those high flyers that leave trails behind them, which are not airplanes. They're not airplanes as we know them. If they're not flying at all, and they don't fly at all these days, then that tells me this is not people traveling from LA to San Francisco or across the country or anything. It's something else altogether, because they're not stopping traveling. So why are we seeing no planes?
Well, as far as the haze is concerned, you had a very interesting theory that as soon as you said it, it just was like a light bulb went on, and it totally made sense to me when you said it.
Yeah, I think that it's weird, okay, because there's no planes, or very few. So that indicates to me that whatever they're doing up there, their DOR-based travel isn't working, because the towers have been neutralized on too big of an area. But something is causing this lower level atmospheric haze, and it's low. It's like across, you can see it blocking the view like smog, and we live in the mountains, so it's kind of weird. And also it's blackish brown. I see it to the west and I see it to the east, and it hangs there, and then it starts to collect. So I know it's not smoke, but it's the way it's collecting and becoming like little clouds will come out of it. I know it's DOR, which is just DORized particulates and water vapor. I think the people are doing it. I think that people are so full of fear right now that they are being the DOR generators. They're being used through frequency-based mind control, through their smartphones, and through whatever DOR they have in their houses, and through the fear of the media, because they are listening to the news. They shouldn't be doing that. And I think that they're just using the massive population of the US West to be their own DOR generators. It's creating a haze in the atmosphere, and then they go to sleep at night and they're unconscious, and it clears.
Yeah, the mining of human resources takes a little hiatus at that point.
Well, I think they still get us through our dreams. I honestly think they do that,
but not to the degree that it is during the day.
Right.
And the evidence of that is that every morning, boom, it's completely clear. And then as people start going to their jobs and the misery of spending another day in the matrix sets in again, it just, the sky mirrors that.
Yeah. And people are legitimately very, very afraid of COVID. I mean, I know people who, in my neighborhood and community, I mean, I don't talk about these things with anybody I know here, but they'll say, I'm so scared of COVID, or I know this person got it, that person got it. I'm afraid to touch stuff. I'm afraid to be around people. And this kind of fear is just building on that DOR. It's like a feedback loop, and you'll produce the DOR rather than OR. The aliens that spoke to George Adamski in Inside the Flying Saucers, they described that when humans live in balance with their Earth, which obviously right now we're in a terrible state of imbalance, but once the humans become in balance with their environment and living under the laws of God, that the atmosphere will sweeten. And so they were saying that the DOR will clear and we'll be the OR generators. But right now, because of all this fear, we're DOR generators. And that's, I mean, I don't think I am, but I think a lot of people are. My fear is very minimal.
I've always said there's nothing to fear ever, no matter what. And certainly there's no reason to fear a flu virus that has a less than 2% fatality rate, like any other flu. But then, no one gets through this experience we call life alive. You can't get out of it alive. So what? No, seriously, I know that sounds cliche and all, but why let it affect your life?
You can't fear death constantly.
People are just, I know that that's a very small minority of people that are doing this, but the extreme is they're locking themselves in their houses. They're afraid to do anything.
Mm-hmm. And then the people who know that it's a big hoax or just a fear generator, they're afraid of the government lockdowns and clampdowns and all that stuff. So this is like constant fear feedback loop.
But I do see little glimpses here and there of hope. I have seen a lot of people. I can see with my senses and observe that the media line that they're giving everyone of most people taking the vaccine and being really afraid and religiously using their masks. It's not true. It's not true at all. the majority of people don't buy all of that stuff. I saw an article recently of some big Broadway star in some huge Broadway play with a big role within that play opt out of the whole thing and quit because they would have forced her to take the COVID vaccine. And she said no. And she literally just quit the whole thing rather than go ahead and do it. That is really, really cool.
I saw a poll on Yahoo News that said that a staggering 80% of people would just not go to a restaurant if they required a vaccine or proof of vaccine. So, I mean, I was surprised. And apparently the news article, whoever wrote it, they were surprised, but I can't believe it made it into the mainstream media, something like that. So a lot of people aren't putting up with it. So we shouldn't buy too much into that fear.
Not at all. And this is kind of the last thought I want to get out is that if you're hearing something said by someone who you think knows what they're talking about, either they have a degree or they sound like they know what they're talking about, or they work for a company that is really prestigious, that doesn't make it knowledge. It's still just belief. So I would say that do your own research and find out for yourself what is true, what is actual knowledge, rather than just believing what someone else believes, because there's no more effective way for the parasitic AI to spread lies right now than someone saying something and a bunch of people just not questioning it, is believing it. They pass it to the next person, so on and so forth. That's how lies get spread.
So that's why we covered this wildfire issue, is because one of the big lies causing fear is about these wildfires. Not so much that, I'm not saying it's a lie that they're happening, they are happening, but the cause has been obscured and confounded. And the size of the wildfires, we have no way of verifying. Smoke in areas that couldn't be affected by wildfires, that was a weird psy-op they were doing. They were really trying to promote this wildfire fear. And I think it's dissipating now, although in Northern California, we really need rain. So we're doing what we can. We've already gridded that area like crazy. So it's just a matter of what is the natural cycle of things now at this point. And if California indeed has a wildfire deficit, then perhaps what's going on up north, I mean, I don't know if it does, but perhaps what's going on up north is just part of the cycle that's going to play itself out. And when our creator says it's time for rain, it will be time for rain.
And if it's not supposed to go up there, then that's just the way it is.
We're doing the best we can.
Disinformation spreads quicker than COVID at a rock concert, a lot quicker. That's the last thing I'm going to say.
Well, there's nothing I could say to top that.
End on a high note, right?
So thank you very much for listening to our update, and we'll be back again very soon with more. Our website is thekembo.com. You can find it in the description of the video. You can go there to donate to us, to help us with our gifting efforts. You can buy Organite for your home. And we also have tons and tons of information. I mean, you can read for hours on there. So I provide everything for free. So
please check out the frequently asked questions.
Yeah, that would be a good thing to check out. If you go to the orgone energy section of the site, I'm sending people there. People have a lot of Organite questions. And on that section at the very top, I put links to several articles that pretty much answer everything you're going to want to know. So there's frequently asked questions, there's Organite myths debunked and chemtrail myths debunked, and a whole article on that page about how Organite works. So, and videos on how to make it. So there's everything you need. So yeah, definitely go there. We offer tons and tons of free articles and materials to help you. So please visit the website. I also do have a book that's a textbook on how to pretty much do exactly what we did here to clear the air and bring rain. Also to promote health for yourself and clear your home of EMF. So anyway, thank you very, very much for listening.
And just one last thing real quick. It's still new news. We are also on BitChute, and in addition to that, we are on Odyssey. That's Odyssee. So we have two alternate video platforms that we post to.
Yes, because we get censored here now. Fortunately, no strikes on this YouTube channel, and we know why, but we don't like having our videos removed. So now they're getting automatically put onto those other platforms as well. So you can check that out and subscribe there if you'd like. Thank you very much for listening, and we will be back again very soon.